Welcome to another majestic episode of Natural AF. I'm your host, Isaac.
And I'm Alexa.
And this show, for those of you that don't know, have just stumbled in here on a trip. This is a show where we delve into what it means to be natural AF on all planes, on mental, spiritual, physical, all of it. Who are we really? What's our natural state of being? And what are we really capable of? Over the last several years, some of us have sat back and watched all of humanity go through a very embarrassing point of insanity, in our opinions. And we get to talk about that with our guest today, which is...
Yeah, so Gray Griffith from Café Locked Out. So it's got quite a following since the COVID era. And basically, Michael's the creator of this platform. It's basically just a media platform that has given people a voice over the last few years, especially a lot of... Well, I guess it kind of started throughout COVID and then giving a lot of the vaccine injured a voice. And yeah, I mean, Michael just really interviews people from all walks of life and has been following, I guess, a lot of what's been happening in Australia and within Australian culture over the last 5 years. So it's really interesting to watch. And what I love about his platform is it has actually extended out to a lot of other podcasters and hosts that have come on and there's like some sub shows under Café Locked Out. So if you go to their Rumble page, you can check all of them out. And so really love what Michael's doing. And we had a really awesome chat with him, didn't we?
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. Comes from a interesting background. He's creative, but he's, I don't know, I almost see him as like a explorer in the realms of human psyche and sociology and just the way we interact with each other on so many levels. So it's a fascinating conversation. And we get some peeks behind the curtain of the mind of Australia. This is a good conversation to start off a little bit of self-reflection for the folks down under for what the hell has been going on down here for the last 4 or 5 years.
But before we get into it, let's have a little chat about the week that was. So Isaac and I are going to start doing this in the intros just to have a little bit of fun because I don't know, sometimes things come up and we're like, that's hilarious. We should totally talk about that on the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it may look like we have a great relationship, but behind the scenes, there's a lot that goes on that we don't really talk about. It doesn't get talked about, but we're going to talk about it. This is just between you and I.
Yeah, and this week's topic is food shaming.
Yeah, so I'm not a victim, but I have been exposed to something that Americans... may be shocked at, that we don't actually know what good food is. No. And I get shamed on that on a regular basis.
And so this is coming from someone also that I do claim to be a foodie. I love to cook. I love food. I love enjoying good food. It's just in my Taurian nature, guys. I'm a Taurus, and it's the one thing. I don't live my life by astrology signs, but it's the one thing that I definitely can say that is in my Taurian nature. I love to live life through my senses and experience, and one of my favorite senses is taste.
But you also have this pressure about you that, like, I was at the market the other week by myself. And I've been conditioned. I've been conditioned by the utteral, just the I don't know what to say about it. The experience of being food shamed has shaped my relationship with myself in ways that were shocking.
Yeah, tell them the story when you were at the market without me, because I thought it was hilarious. But then I also realized I was like, oh my God, I do actually food shame you. I'm so sorry.
Well, I was by myself and I had Lex. One thing I'll say is you make amazing food. And when I go and do the markets or when I'm working, basically you pack an amazing lunch for me.
He gets breakfast, he gets lunch, he gets snacks.
And it's good. It's like homemade, healthy, just amazing ingredients, organic, fresh, all this stuff. And I get there and I've got this, it's basically Mexican food, but it's kind of like a burrito bowl situation. But I didn't bring any chips with me. And I usually like some chips, some crunch to go with.
Yeah, I think we just ran out of corn chips and I just made the bowl. Yeah.
So going gluten-free and being half Mexican like I am, it does not really work for me. I've got to have some bread in there with it. So and I'm at the market stall by myself, so I can't leave for very long. I've got to just jump out real quick and come back. And right across the street from me is a little cafe. So I run over to grab a little bit of coffee and whatever is like the cheapest bread that they have, which was a single croissant, which is very good. It's very nice.
Yeah, this particular cafe, I think the guy there has got to be a pastry chef because the pastries are phenomenal.
Yeah,
but
and we
anyway.
won't talk about the coffee food shaming today.
Oh,
They'll save
that's
that
for another episode.
we should do a whole episode on coffee in Australia versus what we call coffee in America. But so I bring back my croissant and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm gonna have the croissant, but I'm gonna have it with Mexican food, which is kind of weird. But I hesitate and I'm like, I actually put my croissant away. I wrap it up and push it away from me because I'm like thinking, if I start eating this Mexican food with this croissant, everyone around me is immediately going to judge me and look at me eating this abomination.
And mind you, when he came home and told me this story, I literally, before I started laughing about it, I was like, that's disgusting. Like, you cannot eat a croissant with Mexican food. Like, no. And he's like, see? And I was like, oh my God, I can see why you were so paranoid because I literally food shamed you.
To be fair, it's not the best choice with Mexican food. It does not go well together, but it was at hand. I did eat the croissant with the Mexican food. I'll just give you that. Like, I stopped for like a minute. I got about halfway through my dish. I'm just like, fuck it. I'm just gonna eat it. Who gives a shit? But I do know that I am not self-conscious, but I am more conscious about what I pick to eat after being down here, or just paying attention to how I'm eating it. Because sometimes I don't know. I think I tried eating some garnish or something that I wasn't supposed to.
Isaac does
Japanese
the funniest things with foods that he doesn't know how to eat. So just for anyone that doesn't know me, I grew up in Sydney. I'm also half Middle Eastern, half Serbian. So we're very, and generally in Australia, especially like Sydney, Melbourne, like those kinds of cities, probably of all of Australia, Sydney and Melbourne are the most like culturally diverse.
Yeah.
And
we've got a lot of foreigners out there in Sydney.
And so, yeah, especially when it comes to food, I'm very well versed in a lot of different cultures of food. And like I said, I'm a foodie. I love food.
Yeah. And it's not like in America, we've got Outback Steakhouse. It does not reflect Australian food in the slightest.
No. And so even though I'm not Asian, obviously, when I go out to eat Asian food, I know how they eat it. And yeah, it's like so funny. Anyone that has eaten pho, like you get, it's a noodle soup, usually with rare beef, or you can get chicken. And then you get like a side of sort of garnishing. So you put bean sprouts and holy basil and usually chili and some lemon and whatever. And we were out one day and I ordered pho and they brought out the plate of garnishings and Isaac just starts like picking at them. He's like, this is, and I was like, what are you doing? That's for my phone. He's like, I thought they just brought out a little entree for us.
The hors d'oeuvre, little some grass clippings on a plate.
Anyway, so I really, I feel like I'm not training you, but I'm definitely opening you up to a whole new world of how to eat food and how to eat good food. Because I'm sorry, Americans, but you guys just don't know food.
It's okay though. Like if I was out with some guys and I'm eating something and they start nitpicking like how I'm eating it, I'm going to be like, dude, I didn't know I was on a date. I didn't think I was here with a freaking group of women. Like, I don't know. It's a very feminine thing to me. It's just like if a guy was like, oh no, you got to have, it's like, okay, who raised the rainbow flag?
And can I just say, I am definitely generalizing when I say Americans, because I've got a girlfriend who's originally from America that lives here, but she's Asian background, and I feel like again they know food a little bit better. She's also from California, and we went there for dinner, and there was actually some pretty cool restaurants and stuff. So it does depend on where you're from, but generally speaking, Americans just don't know food. Anyway, so the reason that we wanted to bring this up too is I want to hear from people that can relate to this. I want to hear from people that have been food shamed and how. Like I want to hear the story or stories. And I also want to hear from foodies that are known to be food snobs, and it's just because we know good food. It's not out of judgment out of the other person. It's like the judgment of the food and how you're eating it, if that makes sense. Anyway, so sure. I want to hear from both sides because I think it's hilarious. And I'm like, I feel like so many people can relate to this.
Yeah.
Or maybe they can't. Maybe I'm just in a bubble.
And if you're in a situation like I'm in, just enjoy it. Just enjoy the good food. Don't be rattled by the waves crashing against the beach. It's never going to end. It's never going to stop. She's never going to stop telling you how to eat properly.
Anyway.
Anyways, with our dysfunctional relationship aside, let's get back to it. So before we get into the episode, we're just glad that we've been getting orders for people from overseas. We got another order going out to the Middle East from the United States, ordering a 3-pack of Alleviate. And I just got to say, for people that are, I mean, granted, we do give a pretty sweet deal on 3-packs, but to trust us or to look at what we're offering and to be like, this is valuable enough, I'm going to order 3 of them and I'm going to pay for extra shipping to send it far, far away. Thank you so much. We're just honored that you would give us a shot. And for people that don't know what I'm talking about Alleviate, which is more than just a muscle and joint pain rub. This has transformed how I take care of my body when I'm working or working out, and it's reshaped how I approach injuries. Instead of just shoving it under the rug and being stiff and sore all the time and just continuing on, this lubricates the situation to where I'm not as stiff, I'm not freaking sore and grumpy when I come home from a hard day out.
It's the product that never ceases to amaze, because even like Mum and I, who have been using it now for over a year, we know that it works. We know that it's amazing. We recommend it to so many people. And both of us just in the last couple of weeks used it separately. Can't remember what was wrong with Mum, but she put it on and like almost instantly, she reckons it was within minutes that like the area that was affected was not only relaxed, but then the pain completely went away. And that was it. Like the pain was gone. She didn't even have to use it a second time. And same as me, like I had the weirdest thing happen. It was during the storm. I just had this pain around my upper abdomen, like all the way from my back, like to the front around my stomach. And I actually couldn't sit back because every time I put pressure on that area, I don't know if it was my lungs or referred kidney pain. It was bizarre. I was really uncomfortable and it was kind of painful. Anyway, so Isaac just rubbed it literally around the whole area. Same thing. Within 20 minutes, the pain had completely gone and it didn't come back. I didn't even have to use it a second time. And I was blown away. Even though I know it works, I was still blown away. So it is such an amazing product.
Yeah. And I'm glad to have created something that is helping people. It may not be for you if your idea of self-care is a ginormous bag of Cheetos and 8 hours in front of a video game. But for everyone else that likes natural products that don't have ingredients that they can't pronounce or that they have no idea what they're doing in there, you can check out our website, naturalartform.com. Read up on it. Look at the descriptions. I explain why everything's in there that's in there. And it's very simple.
And if anyone is kind of skeptical because they're like, oh, you know, people always talk about these amazing products and you try and it doesn't work, we actually offer a 100% money back guarantee. So if you purchase it and within 30 days, it hasn't helped you and you just don't think it's worth it, then you can return it and we'll give you your money back. So it's literally risk-free to try it.
60 or 90 days. I don't know. You can check my return policy on the website.
I'm pretty sure it's 30, but anyway.
It doesn't really matter to me. If you use it and at any point you're like, you know what? It's not working for me. I don't want it. I'll just refund you. Just message me.
And we've never had anyone take that offer up.
Most of the people that buy it for themselves, when you actually try it, even the people that have doubts, when they actually try it, they're just like, wow, okay. So
it's pretty phenomenal. And for our listeners, you'll get 10% off your entire order, no matter how many times you order, using the code NaturalAF10 at checkout. So head to the website, check out the products, and don't forget to use that discount code for a sweet deal.
Yeah. You can also like, share. So don't forget to tell other people about this show if you found it interesting or exciting, or you just hate it and you need to tell people about it. Please do.
Yeah, if something that makes you really angry, just share the hell out of it, because that's usually what makes things go viral.
I want you to comment on this video and tell me what you didn't like about it. Just push the algorithms over the edge.
Yeah, I think people are going to like this conversation. We kind of touched on a lot of things. I love we touched on AI. We talked about AI for a little bit. So anyway, let's get into the episode. We hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Michael Gray Griffith is a playwright, producer, and host of Café Locked Out, which was created after he was cancelled by the theatre world for publicly stating that he would not segregate audiences during the COVID vaccine rollout. With so many people who were questioning the COVID narrative being censored and vilified, Michael began recording the stories of these people, and on his travels around the country has now recorded thousands of interviews. Despite constant censorship and shadow banning, Café Locked Out has since evolved into a hub for other like-minded podcasters and hosts a whole range of shows that offer an alternative platform to the mainstream media. Michael's goal is and always has been to defend free speech in Australia and to effect positive change to the wider community. Thanks so much for joining us today, Michael.
That's pretty sweet. Thanks.
Yeah, I like that. You were a playwright and producer. Like that's a very unique skill set from the world I come from. I'm very blue collar.
You want to know something funny? There's I never wanted to call myself a playwright until I was making a living doing it. I wanted to earn the right to do it, and finally we cracked it. And the plays was supporting a small group of actors, other producer, and myself. So we'd made it, And we're writing contemporary plays about Australia. But I wanted, someone asked me what I did. And no one was ever asking. But then I was at a dentist, and the dentist said, "So what do you do?" And I went, "Aha!" And I went, "Aha!" That's the first time. That's a true story.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, I'd love to get more into your story, Michael, because, I find it really interesting, this path that you've been led on and how you ended up creating Café Locked Out and doing what you're doing today. So if you want to share with us a bit of your journey and, go back start as far back as you feel is necessary. And, just tell us a little bit more about the things that led you to be doing the work that you're doing now.
All right. I've always been interested in the time that I'm in and the people in the time I'm in. So, and I've always been interested in the challenges and the tragedies of ordinary people's lives. So whenever I was writing, I was just writing about ordinary people. And so needless to say, it's kind of hard to get published because people are consumed with the famous or they want to escape, they want to be Lord of the Rings stuff. But finally, the theatre was taking off because I was writing about contemporary Australia, and one after another, the plays were working. Like I had this play called The Magnolia Tree, which was the first one to really break it. And that's where three siblings are come together to put their mother in a nursing home, and she's got profound Alzheimer's. And the nursing home is going to consume most of the money of the house. And the two sisters are destitute, but they're happy the mum's going in her home. But the brother turned up to kill his mother, but he couldn't do it. He's got the stuff to do it, but he's a real estate agent. So he starts a conversation to convince the sisters that the best thing to do morally is basically to let their mum go tonight, and that the morality they grew up with no longer sustains them, so why keep it? And so he really challenges them. And at the end of Act 2, one of the women leaves the room to murder their mother. And then I come back on stage, and there's two endings, and the audience has to vote for the ending they want.
Oh, wow. I love that.
And it's been on about 80 times, and 58% of the time the audience murder mother.
Wow. That's so interesting.
Yeah, and it gets into quality of life, this quantity versus. It gets all these. It's not like a debate against euthanasia, because it's not euthanasia. This is murder, but it's very, very, very interesting, and that's what interested me. And then when the play was on, so many people came up and went, "We've had this conversation. We've had this conversation."
Really?
And what I've seen happen in the Australia I was born into is that ever since school, I remember there was a young man in school called Ricardo, I think, and I had lots of different schools, But my last school, he was there, and he was older than me, and he was very pale. And I was in WA where everyone was suntanned, and he was just as white as a ghost. And the whole family was, they just used to stand out. Anyway, then one day he took his own life, and he did so in a place where the whole suburb could see. And I thought, he's making a statement, but no one would talk about it. Everyone would talk, he took his life, but that was it. You couldn't go any deeper. And I was thinking, well, this man has made a statement with his entire existence. He's giving up his future dreams and anything else he could possibly do to make some profound statement. Shouldn't we at least try understand what it is to see if there's something wrong? And then I realized that there's no, people sort of leave it to silence as if they think that there's some mythical repairing tools in silence, but there's not. People, what it does, I realized in the Australia I was going up, Australia was sort of a poster to the world of how great we are and how happy we are. And we hid all our ailments and all our issues and all our sadness and tragedies under this poster. And now in our current day culture, and I liked writing about what was under the poster, but now in our current day poster world, I see that like Australia that poster is fading. No one believes in it anymore. Not the rest of the world, not us. It's just up like some old communist regime, workers unite. And we're in a lot of trouble. And I think we can get through this. But the only way to really get through it, to really grow, so that, say, you two have children and your grandchildren are born into a country better than any of us could ever imagine. But the only way for them to reach that promised land, because Australia has that great promise everywhere, is for us to talk and talk and then action and do it and say no to what is unacceptable. So what happened was the plays were going like crazy. I'd had everything I had dreamt of was just about to happen, even though I was in my early 50s. It was amazing. We had major directors getting ready to direct plays. There was other major actors fighting over plays. I mean, it was just extraordinary. And then they closed us all down. And even the Army was touring one of my plays, and the Army's never used theatre. So it was just wild. Anyway, when they reopened the theatres, which we were very excited about, suddenly they said, you have to segregate the audiences. The unjabbed can't come in. And all these people I'd looked up to, these directors who had done powerful social commentary work, were going, oh, that's great. I could think of nothing worse than sitting in the theatre next to a filthy anti-vaxxer. And I was just looking at this. And so literally as soon as they said they were going to segregate, I got online and just said, the Wolves Theatre Company will never segregate theatres, theatre audiences. Segregation is a cancer of the culture's soul. We won't participate. And I was cancelled. In fact, one major artist actually set up a hate page for me on Facebook. And all these people I'd worked with were just one thing after another of how incredibly horrendous I was as a human being. It went on forever. Wow. And I remember my team being devastated. But that very afternoon, I sat there thinking, well, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? This is all I've ever wanted to be, was here. And now that dream's over. And I set up, I thought, well, free speech is under attack. How about I said, I'll set up a podcast called Café Locked Down then, because the cafes are all locked down. And I'll just defend free speech by just getting anyone on who's brave enough to talk. And so I had no idea where it was going. I was just going to do it just to try a help in the fight. And then that evolved into Café Locked Out, which is what I do now. So it was like basically beyond my dreams lay a destiny that I never knew was there. And now I live in that destiny. But what's really interesting is when I was doing everything was going well with the theatre, there was still an emptiness in me that I couldn't shift. And I thought, oh, maybe that's just a human curse that you take to the grave. you know. But that hole is gone now, and I don't miss where I was. I just keep doing the work that I feel I just keep doing this until the path ends. And so I don't, this is where I am. But what was interesting on my second or third show, I read out all those hate mails, and I read them out and said their name. And I didn't do it to insult them. I did it to hold up a mirror and go, do you actually see what you guys wrote? We've worked together. We've been out to dinner together. We've created together, and then suddenly, because I've said no, you're basically I was a dirty Jew in pre-war Nazi Germany. There's no getting away from it. That's what I was. And they were telling the art world, basically, look at us, we're attacking him. We're on your side. So they were attacking me to make sure the government didn't attack them. That's what I think happened.
Yeah, it's very communistic in that way, where it's the dobbing one's neighbor out, giving them to the empire in exchange for hopefully a pat on the head and, maybe staving off your execution for another day.
Yeah, that's right. It's turning on each other. That's divide and conquer, And but the other interesting thing of this journey, I was talking to a guy last night in an interview. We've grown up with always where they're trying to get us to avoid pain. You know what I mean? That's why we've got this safety culture now. Even if you go to a playground, hover over your kids in case they fall. Well, you're realizing what that creates is a weaker society, and that you have to fall. Both of you now, where you are now in your lives, what you've learned about yourself, what you can trust about yourself, you've learned that through pain, not through the happy days on a holiday sitting on a beach. You've learned that by being kicked in the face, laying on the ground, metaphorically, and picking yourself up and going, okay. And you go, oh, wow, I've got the strength to get up. And so I think this time can be very painful the last few years, some days worse than others, and some days not. But I think the pain is necessary for us to actually learn, okay, who are we? Where are we? Do we want to be here? Where are we going? Do we want to go there? This is the time where a truly new renaissance of especially Australians could happen if they just have the courage to go through the storm. Yeah.
Excuse me. I love that you said that, Michael, because we actually talk about that a lot on this podcast, is that pain is actually quite necessary. If you actually look at physically growing, kids get growing pains. It is a signpost of growth, I believe, to go through pain. And I think that this aversion to pain that we've been so conditioned towards, I think it's actually very clever, because, like you said, it actually does make a weaker society. Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah, these are the lessons and we're learning these together. See, where we are now, like, to be honest, I've done these 4 years of interviews, and all these people claim to have the truth. But all we really have is some jigsaw pieces. We're not sure. We haven't seen the cover, so we don't really know what's going on. We actually don't know what the whole picture is. We have no end pieces or corner pieces. We don't even know if the jigsaws come from the same jigsaw. And we try to build theories and everything on that. But ultimately, in this period we're in now, if you talk to everyone who's gone the journey that we have, it's here that's led the way. Not here's come on, I'm not doing it, but something in here has led the way. And I've got a feeling now that the heart can see further than the head, because it's like it's got a map, but the mind can't read the map. So why I think people say this has been a spiritual war is that most people who've defied the government on some level, that's been a spiritual decision. They're following a voice. I know everyone that at Epic, everyone I was at Epic, everyone I was going, why are you here? They're going, I had to come. They couldn't answer it because they were using nerve endings that they had probably hadn't used most of their life. We didn't have to. We were Australia. It was easy going. But suddenly, and that's what I see happening. But what that means, I don't know. I don't pretend to know more than what I can see, touch, and feel, and the rest is just assumptions.
Yeah.
But
sorry, Michael, for our American listeners, Epic was a huge rally that went on down at Parliament House in Canberra a few years ago. And how many people were there? About 1 million people showed up?
Well, I was there from the beginning. I don't know. All I know was, so basically there was a call out to come to Canberra, and this was inspired by the Canadian protest. So the Canadian truckies. And then we sort of answered suit. We sort of answered the call. And so people came from all over Australia to Canberra. The first people who got there got attacked by the police quite savagely. And I think they did that to scare the rest from coming. But instead, they inspired the rest to come. And so all these people turned up. And, well, some people say 1 million. Some people say 2. I just know that it was the largest protest Canberra had ever seen. And everyone went there peacefully. Everyone went there to basically say, we're not happy with the direction we're going. And we got completely ignored by the politicians. But I think that was the message. The message, all the big protests around the whole of Australia, they've ignored all of them. They've dragged out all our court cases or throw them out. I think the reason they're ignoring us is that's their second weapon to control us. The first weapon is fear, and that's losing its grip now. We saw that in the cyclone. They tried to terrify Australians were like, don't care. Now they use disillusionment, and so they ignore us, just totally ignore you, and basically you think, oh, what's the point? We don't stand a chance, and everyone gives in. But it's actually a weapon against us, and I think the challenge right now, for people like us, if we want to see change, we have to find a way to put enthusiasm back into our soul. The same enthusiasm that saw us go to Canberra, we have to find that because I truly believe that the defiant Australians are the only hope Australia has for reaching somewhere better than the direction it's heading. Because the direction it's heading, they're not taking us anywhere that's conducive to our souls.
Yeah. Why do you think it was so heavy-handed here compared to someplace like America, where we had lockdowns, but you guys had rubber bullets being shot at you and all kinds of crazy shit?
Yeah. They hurt. Yeah. So, Melbourne was a testing ground. So if they wanted to put on a big musical, like they put on a musical King Kong with a massive gorilla on the stage, and they didn't know whether that would work on Broadway. So they do it in Melbourne. And because no one in New York knows where Melbourne is, and so if it fails, they never hear about it. And it's much cheaper than doing it in Broadway. So they test stuff here. I think they test that here. They also tested computer software here. Melbourne's been a real testing community for stuff they want to bring to the American market. I think if you watch what they're doing around the world, they're testing different things. I think they tested Melbourne to see how compliant people could be, how far they could push them. And Dan Andrews appears to be the perfect weapon for them to do that. And that's what they did. Our lockdowns, I was talking to someone the other day up around here. They only had a lockdown once, and they had never had any other lockdowns. We were locked down perpetually, stupid things like, remember, you can't drink, you can't take the mask down to drink. You had to drink through the mask. Impossible things to do.
Ridiculous.
And I think that's but what I think they also learned, because they make mistakes too, is the violence of the shooting at the shrine and the violence against the women, the pepper spraying of the grandmother Mary and stuff. This created Epic. People revolted against it. And then putting Monica and Smith in jail for a month, they're learning from these. What they did is they created a martyr. And so now I don't think they're going to be as arresting as many people, because I think they're changing tactic now, where We don't have a Dan Andrews to hate. We don't have a McGowan. There's no real clear enemy. People feel like everything's gone back to normal, but in this new normal, you can get cancer on a Monday and be in the grave on Friday. That never happened. You can have a late-term abortions, like 350 of these babies survive, and the baby survives and they let it just sit there and die on a bench. Now, that's not normal. That's evil. But in the new normal, that's normal. And so I think they've got us to here and put us back to here. But I don't know if I'm rambling now, but I think Melbourne was the testing ground, and now they've backed off a bit on Melbourne. And say in England now they're arresting people for Facebook posts. And now they're trying other things. And so I think they've got the world and they go and they test things here to see what we can take. And Melbournians proved to them that a gregarious society that was inclusive, that was super cool. Melbourne was super cool, artistic, can literally turn into the Lord of the Flies overnight. And the police officers who have protect and serve can become our oppressors on an afternoon shift. And that they'll do things like they'll actually physically hurt their own brothers and sisters. So a lot of people said, they were from overseas, these officers. They weren't. They were from Victoria. And they shot us. They used pepper spray. But they shot us. They shot at us. And if they had real bullets, chances are they would have done that too. Yeah. And they lied about us, and the media lied about us, and everything to promote anyone who said no is evil. And it's quite staggering. It's quite horrific. Because one other thing too, especially in Victoria, I don't know about the rest of Australia, we were talking about this recently, but if you didn't take it, for about 3 years, you lived under the distinct possibility that they could come for us, round us up, because they built the camps. They had Mickleham. They had these camps all surrounded by razor wire. So there was a real sensation that at any moment you could have an armoured car out your side, you'd be dragged out, and your neighbours would just close the windows. Yeah. And here's where we were. And because we became something we didn't know we could become, Melbournians lost their identity. They no longer know who they are because they've done things they truly would believe they wouldn't do. They all believed they'd hide Anne Frank, and yet literally before Dan Andrews asked where she was, they were going, she's over there. She's over there. Just leave us alone. And so, and no one wants to deal with it. They go back to silence. Let's not talk about it. If silence will fix it. But it's actually a cancer of our culture because we're unwilling to deal with it. And until we do deal with it and try and understand it, we won't prevent it happening again. And everything about our society, there will be a bitter aftertaste because most of us will know this is all bullshit. We've seen our real selves. And so we don't buy any of this. So I think there's a lot of healing to do and a lot of growth to come of this, but only if Australians have the courage to go, wow, I can't believe we did that. Why do we do that? And is there, a better way to do it?
Yeah.
Amazing times. Historic.
It was very symbolic, the mask. I don't know if you went down those rabbit holes of the symbolic use of the mask and rituals and all that kind of thing.
They were the Nazi thing. You wore a thing on your shoulder with a Nazi symbol. That was the mask in the end. You wore the mask to say, I'm with the government. You knew it didn't work. You knew if you had it on your kids didn't need it, but you did it to go, we're a part of the Dan Andrews party,
And symbolically, it's like you're silencing yourself. It's to me, that was what that was. It was like people didn't want to speak up, so they covered their mouths with their masks and just live their life like that.
Yeah. I think Melbournians alone, even though I'll get me in a lot of trouble, I think they stole a lot of hope from the entire world of how humanities would act under pressure. You know what I mean? Like in London, you've got the guys cutting down the cameras. They're spreading hope. And I think that's what we were fighting back with Epic. A big portion of the people who went to the Canberra protests were from Melbourne. So the ones that were fighting back were really fighting back. The ones in the marches, I mean, we had one of the marches in Melbourne, I think, was close to 500,000. And, we just filled up Burke Street front. It was incredible. And it was ignored, but there was a real defiance to hold on to something good. And even though we had that fear that we could go out in the camps, people had signs, grandmothers were holding up signs going, you need a bigger camp. So we was that defiant. So there was a good, strong sense of defiance. But even so, we were still in the minority. The majority just went along with it.
Yeah.
And they still going along with it. It's not something you can have open conversations like this about with the people who went along. They just won't do it. They won't go there.
Have you tried? Have you interacted with anybody sort of one-on-one?
Yeah, that's my life,
confronted them, and they just stay silent?
If they come across, what usually happens is they hate the fact that they took it, and they blame the fact that they needed it for work. But to show you something extraordinary, we were in Bright about 2 months back, and we were with a thing called the Forest of the Fallen, which is this is an art piece where people plant on these bamboo poles, and on top of the bamboo poles is an A4 piece of paper with a person's name and a pic and the writing about how they were either injured or maybe they died from the vaccine. And there was a woman in Launceston who was doing it. That's where I came across it on a tour of Tasmania. And so I did a documentary on her, and she didn't have a name for it. So I gave it the name Forest of the Fallen. That's my only contribution. And then we started marketing it like crazy. So this goes around like a protest. It sits there quietly, and you can read it if you wish. Yeah. And when we were in Bright, this old couple in this, oh, not old, my age really, in their 60s, were looking at it. And I came up to talk to them. And one of them was a nurse. And she said, I've got cancer. She said, I took the first 3 to keep my job as a nurse, and it gave me stage 3 cancer. And then I didn't want to take another one, but they said your immune system is so low that if you don't take the booster, this could get worse. So she took another booster. Now she's dying from stage 4 cancer.
Wow.
And I said to her, do you want to talk to us? I said, this is what I do. I record stories. It's balanced. I'll just record your story. I'll edit it. I said, because we're the only justice you'll get. And she went, okay. She goes, I'm so angry at them, she said. And she knew it as a jab. And she got really angry then. And she said, I'm just going for a ride. Let me think about it. So I said, okay. Anyway, she rode off with her partner. Half an hour later, the police turned up. And instead of talking to me, she'd contacted the police and told them that we were basically upsetting people.
Wow.
And so she turned the police on us. So
here
is someone who's willing to hear the truth of what's actually happening to her, and she's going to die. And instead, like I was suggesting to her, have you tried ivermectin or these other natural, they're working, these natural remedies? No, I'm sticking with the chemo, so, but what got me is how willing she was to protect those who are killing her from those who wanted to give us some justice. So she was really lovely with us, but then she went back and, I think there's clues there to, that doesn't understand. You know what I mean? There's really interesting. I can't profess to understand it except to know this happens, and it happens a lot.
And the police situation is so different from America because if you would have told a cop that somebody down there is making you upset and is upsetting people, they would have been like, so? I don't know I know a few cops, and none of them would have gone and hassled anybody for making someone upset unless it was like, there's a KKK march,
Yeah. And I videoed the police when they came down to us. And she came by herself. She was so angry. But then, maybe she's jabbed, maybe she knows something. I don't know. But think of it this way. This is what's really interesting. And it's embarrassing to talk about this stuff because it's shameful that we were a part of it. But it's like we're all chickens in a chicken coop. And the ones who are being defiant are the ones pointing out to the other chickens that that's a fox, not a dog. And the others are going, oh, you crazy conspiracy chook. What are you talking about? He's red and Henrietta's hanging out of his mouth. That's a fox.
Yeah.
And yet they'll defend that fox to the death. And nothing we can say can change that. And they're dying. I've met them. They there's a family in a town near here. I wrote about this. So the daughter they had a farm. There was a daughter, son, husband, and wife. The daughter died first of the jab. 2 weeks later, they come in, and the son, in his 20s, is just dead on the floor. He's just dropped dead.
Wow.
Healthy young guy. About a month later, the husband dies. Heart attack, even though he's a farmer. The wife is left alone with the farm, which is now turning to seed because she doesn't have the heart to do anything about it. Won't talk. No, keep it up. Whole family's wiped out. And she's more interested in just keeping everything nice and clean and quiet, keeping that virtue poster up. No, everything's fine here. Yeah. And I met another man who raced out to meet me to do an interview, and we did it in the caravan park. He's got 5 kids, 3 of them in their 20s, now have pacemakers in it from the jab.
Wow. And
he's talking to me 3, which statistically that's impossible going by Pfizer's data. So this one man alone proves that this stuff's bad. But he's not angry. There's no anger in him. All he said was, well, you just have to deal the cards you've been dealt, and we've been dealt jokers. And then further down the road, I interviewed this other couple who've now done an extensive sort of documentary-style interview with me. But they were both severely injured by the jab. They took the same vial. They can't manage their farm. They're losing everything. And they've really, both have almost died. And yet it took them 2 years before they were willing to go public. It's like, we can't mention that the state actually tried to kill me and almost did. And so they went through the proper ways of trying to get the state to listen to them, going, here, your stuff doesn't work. And they did everything politely just to be ignored, shunned, ignored, condescendingly ignored. And then they suddenly realized, wow, we're on our own. And that's when they reached out to us, the only people willing to listen, because basically, like yourselves, we're the ones saying, there's a problem here. There's a significant, real problem to our society here. The state is killing us. And whether they're doing it knowingly or whether they're doing it because they're all corrupt or whether they believe what they're doing but for some reason, if you go town to town, there's just people dying everywhere. There's one funeral director in this one town approached me. She took ages to approach the bus. And then she said that their family's been the funeral directors of this town for 50 years. The last 2 years, they've never been busier, ever. They can't keep up now. There's so many people dying. And I said to them, do any of the mourners come up to you and go, do you think this was the jab? Why so many? No, people just bury them and the silence continues. And so here's where we are in this really interesting time where basically there's a great war against humanity happening. And the only rule is don't mention it. You don't want to name.
Yeah, especially here in Australia. And I'd actually love to get your opinion on this, Michael, because from what I've seen, it's just really interesting to look at the history of different countries, because it was interesting, like seeing what happened in France, for example. And now they had a revolution, and you can see that the people there have that spirit in them because they just weren't taking anything lying down during COVID. And we saw here in Australia, like worldwide, people were seeing around the world what was happening here, and it was shocking. Like they couldn't believe. Like Isaac still can't get over that people were having rubber bullets shot at them. And it's just interesting to look back historically because we've always been known as the lucky country, you know, the lucky nation, and we're a relatively new country compared to the rest of the world. And I just see it as, you know, all these convicts, and it wasn't just convicts, because a lot of very wealthy families also came out to Australia around that time. And I just feel like most people here in Australia, we've kind of been handed everything on a platter, you know, and that's why I come from, my parents both migrated to Australia as kids, very young. And so their parents came out with this idea that, you know, we're Australians now and this is the lucky country and we're going to work hard and the government is so good here. And look, they give us money and they give us Medicare and all these things, right? Which, you know, we now know it's all just to make us outsource our own power, you know, so that we can't look after ourselves. Yes. And then seeing what happened over the last few years, it just really showed that. And what you're saying now really speaks to that, where people don't want to ruffle any feathers. They just want to comply. And so they can get all of their benefits and nothing's going to be affected. And they just want to keep their job. And, you know, and we're known here in Australia for tall poppy syndrome. You know, no one wants to, you know, rise above the herd, so to speak. And, you know, I'd love to get your opinion because that's what I saw during that time and since then. You know, but again, the beauty of what happened during COVID is that lots of people have woken up. So that has been amazing because it's given me definitely hope to see how many people have actually said no and are continuing to now.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to bring that up. Can you see that? I didn't mean to bring that up while he was speaking. I was getting it ready. I apologize.
Yeah.
No worries.
No, go for it.
I took this about 10 seconds before I got shot by a rubber bullet.
Oh, wow.
So on the morning of the shrine, these vehicles were driving around Melbourne streets. They had 6 of these other cars behind them, all full of these stormtroopers, and they weren't asking us questions. They were just firing upon us. And
just incredible.
So what were they demanding?
I got shot then, but I met up with another woman who was near me then. She was in her mid-50s. She said she ran into a news agency, put on a mask and pretended to be reading postcards and was trembling as the stormtroopers were searching the news agency with their guns up looking for people. That's how brutal they were.
So were they dispersing people? Were they giving direct orders like disperse, you're not allowed to be here? Like what were they?
No. So we basically, we're walking down the street. I've got a video of it somewhere. I could probably send it to you. There's walking down the street and then suddenly everyone started running around me, the young people. And then I turned around and then there's this armored car. And they just opened fire.
Wow.
Yeah. No word or anything. They're just without a mask is getting shot. They just
opened fire. And then what happened was there's a video. I don't know if I have it on this computer. There's a video of a young man. I'll just see. Of a young man. And he had his head was split open by a rubber bullet. And
so they were doing...
And that went on to Instagram.
Yeah.
And I think they thought they'd killed him. And so they stopped firing. And I
think I remember seeing that video actually.
Yeah. So they stopped firing. And then I was in the city, so I was injured. But I wanted to go home. But there was all these other young people around me. They were all injured. They'd had shots in the back of the head. They were just injured everywhere. All these young people who were injured. And I've got videos of this. And then someone said, let's go to the shrine. And we sort of went to the Shrine of Remembrance. So I think we were led there. Every direction we went, it was blocked off, except the one that led to the shrine. So I think they led us there. But how would you say this? We went there hoping that our ancestors might emerged to protect us because our brothers and sisters were just sitting at home watching us doing nothing. And I think what happened at the shrine, if you see the footage of the shooting at the shrine, we were there for hours. I think they realized, hey, we've screwed up here, because they're sitting on the shrine of the remembrance and they look like they're at the bingo or coming back from the cricket. And we're here dressed as stormtroopers with all our faces covered, all these massive guns, and we're going to shoot them on the shrine of remembrance. And they, so I, for about 4 or 5 hours, they just didn't know what to do. And then eventually someone high up in the government, guessing who, said open fire, and they opened fire upon us. And I was getting arrested at that point on the steps. But what I've realized since was that moment, why it's historical. I was a part of the old Australia, who I thought Australia was, with these protesters, defending our freedoms that I thought were ours to defend. And what we came up on, one of the greatest shrines we have to freedom. And what we came across was the face of the new world order. This is corporate. This is faceless. Not human beings you can identify, masked up to here, just the eyes. So they're allowed to be as brutal as they can because you can't get back to them. Their body cams don't work. They don't have names. So the state is allowing them to be as brutal as they want to be. And some of them, if you watch the shooting, Rukshan's footage of the shooting, you can see that they're just absolutely enjoying shooting their brothers and sisters. So what a leader like Dan Andrews does is sets up an environment to bring out the very worst in your soul and pat you on the back to let you go. And that's what the police officers were doing. In several protests, they were beyond vicious. And that's what it was. I think that was the moment where Australians, because I've been in Mount Isa where I'm talking to really tough cowboys who start crying when they talk about the shrine because they were watching it. And what they were watching it was the death of who we thought we were and the birth of who the powers want us to become, basically obedient. You do what you're told, you take what we tell you to take, or we'll shoot you. And this is at an apprenticeship level. And but I think too, though, like I said, Epic happened after that. The big protest happened. I think we stalled them in their tracks. I think they realized, wow, there is defiance there. So, and now it's like this uneasy sort of truce, where it's like an unspoken civil war. That's why the Voice, where 60% of people said no, it was nothing to do with race. The 60% or more who said no in the Voice referendum, I think they were basically, there was no camera in their face, there was no boss threatening their job, and they basically said F you to the government. It was a real protest. They were angry. And basically that stunned the government because they had all the musicians with them, all the CEOs, $500 million. And basically we said F you. And I think they realized, whoa. And so that's the battleground there. They tried to get misinformation bill through, didn't work. They got the hate bill through, and now they were sort of stuck here, really. And what happens in the future now is entirely dependent on the people. The people now have to decide what they want. This election is going to be important. We need more independence in the Senate. This is it. It really is now up to the people to decide. And what I would say to the people listening, try not to listen to your own wants and needs. Try to realize instead, just try to find a place where you can go and be by yourself and imagine or sense a child being born, say, 20 years from now, and he or she might not know any of the freedoms that you were born into. And so they're going to be born into a slavery that, social credit score system, digital ID, all this stuff, including maybe getting vaccinated constantly, they're going to be born into a modern slavery, but the enslavers won't be the state. You'll be the enslavers. You're doing this. You're the ones, because you are the generation that can stop this peacefully. You are not powerless. You are actually the most probably important human beings that ever lived, because right now with AI, robots coming in to replace us, all the things that are going on, everything that we're facing, the only thing standing in the way of them bringing in this tyrannical regime is you. You're it. You can either be a part of the problem or a part of the solution, and that'll be your legacy. Won't matter how many holiday homes you own, won't matter how much you earned as a CEO of whatever. Your legacy will be you participated in the enslavement of future generations of Australia, where our grandfathers, who we built shrines to, sacrificed all their hopes and dreams so that you would be free.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love actually that you brought up AI, because I know you've been talking about this a bit, and I wanted to ask you, get into this a bit more, because Isaac uses it a bit here and there for the business, and I've always been very opposed to it, but I've seen how it works. I'm like, oh, it can be helpful, but I am just very wary that, again, look, it's a tool, right? It's like anything, it's a tool. It's not inherently good or...
I reckon it's a weapon. I reckon it's more than a tool. I reckon it's a weapon. But it's a weapon that both sides can use.
Yeah.
And I think we should learn how to wield it.
Yeah.
And do that. If we ignore it and frighten it, they're going to learn how to use it, and they're learning like crazy. But I don't think so I think there's we can write protest songs in an hour. Something happens within an hour, we've got a fantastic protest song that's catchy. If we're writing things to send into politicians and stuff, this can clean it up for us. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's even say with movies, like obviously it's going to change how movies are made, but if we can start producing movies who get across our point of view, and we can do that cheaply, that could probably happen next year or the year after, suddenly we're creating our own culture, and AI will allow us to create our own culture of movies and something like this that the moment we're prevented from doing because movies cost hundreds of millions of dollars or millions of dollars.
Absolutely.
We can't do it. So basically, AI can actually be the liberator, because culture, like it's on the top of my bus, culture is what they're trying to own. They want to control the music. They don't want Oliver Anthony's out there. They want to control the music. They want to control the art forms. That's why I think, isn't Snow White black now?
Oh, yeah. We just saw that last
Mexican
night.
white.
So ridiculous.
And I was in Sydney, and there was a big poster for some new series, and it was called The Invisible Boys, but they were all trans. And I was thinking, the Invisible Boys, there's a flag in every town. Not putting the trans down, but if you want invisible boys, have a look at the white heterosexual boys. They're the ones who are becoming invisible. But they're trying to get this across. So there's this great propaganda war we're in that's still in full flight. And I think AI could actually be a gift to help us combat that. And so let's see.
It's a double-edged sword. I look at it as a force multiplier, and especially in a culture war when you could call it asymmetrical. You look at it like a military operation or an insurgency. There's a lot of good lessons you can take from. I consider them, also brothers in Afghanistan. The people that are fighting this, whatever imperial it is, they were fighting the imperial, Muslim, and they were fighting the imperial U.S. The voice of freedom and that thread, that gene, I think is what they're trying to breed out of us. But in doing so, as they strike, they expose their own throat. And so they strike and they kill their own people and they inject people with stuff and they're dying off. The very people that would stand by and let them go through and do whatever they want. The ones that are defying are the ones that are openly like, we're all about having kids. We're looking forward to that. I know in the States, there's a lot of freedom-oriented people that are all about having kids and replacing the population that willingly took this suicide juice. And the force multiplier of AI, it's a weapon. But like you said, it can act as, a spell check, or all these different little tasks that you don't have to bother yourself with. And with the right intention, it can be empowering as long as you don't rely on it. Reliance is the key. If you rely on it, then it takes something from you.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think I see it as a tool, and I don't think inherently it's good or evil in and of itself. However, all of the access we have to it is still censored, right? You can't just put in any question and get the actual truth. So I think, it's just how are you using it? And I think for the masses, I think they are going to become reliant on it. I think that's the goal because, again, it's just about outsourcing. And I think the thing for me and that's why I actually wanted to get your opinion because you are an artist, is like I see it as there's such a potential to stifle creativity with it, because
that's interesting there, because for me, it's actually given me wings. So I don't have a musical bone in my body, but I write lyrics and poetry as well as other things. Suddenly I have an album worth of songs that we've been using them, and people go, where can I get that? I want to buy it. And I'm like, I don't know if I can sell it to you, But so I haven't put them up for sale yet, but they're working. And then in the image creation is fantastic for podcasts because if you're clever about it, you can get this incredible image from AI and pictures basically convey 1,000 words. You know what I mean? And so at the moment, I think in some creative things it can help, but I still write my own stuff. So I write my own lyrics, I write it all. I just get it to edit it, proofread it really. And so I haven't done the thing where I've got AI to create it for me. The only problem with, I think, people getting something to create, they won't sustain it. Because if you're creation is a journey and you learn from that journey. That didn't work, and you learn and you put things, and the creation is the drug. And so people who want to create will continue to create. And it's the journey. So I see things like, I've got another artist mate, we were talking about AI, and he says how you can tell AI is perfect. But the tragedy of perfection is you can't grow because it's perfect. There's no line out of place. Where humans aren't perfect. So we always have a propensity to grow because we can always improve. And AI is not going to be able to do that because all AI can do is perfect. Yeah, everything, every word, everything. There's no spelling mistakes. There's no line out of place. So they can mimic us to a degree, and they can do, they could create the Mona Lisa, how many versions you want. But the actual creation from nothing, I think that's something in our realm that we have,
Yeah.
And turning.
100%.
So I don't think anything's written. And I think one thing humans have forgotten is we're tough. We conquered this planet. Look at us. We're not faster than a cheetah. We're not stronger than a gorilla. We're not as big as a blue whale. We're basically just sort of hairless apes who are quite vulnerable. And yet we've conquered. This planet is ours. And in fact, the only threat we're facing is the threat that we invented ourselves. It's like the dodos engineering the Portuguese because they're sick of waiting for them to turn up. We've actually created our own enemy. So I wouldn't rule us out. And it's interesting on this planet, the ones that are trying to change things are other human beings, you know. In fact, I'd even say, like, they talk about sharks and viruses, but the scariest thing on this planet is other human beings, because that's what we're up against, especially not so much when the evil or criminals, but when they believe what they're doing is good and it's not. And that's when great evils happen, you know? And I think, it's such an interesting time. The other thing that's happening too across the world, like I said about the spiritual stuff, is I got asked to go to a church the other day, and they said it was a lot of unvaccinated people there, and so I went to this. It was a little hall, and it was full of young people, families, people of different ages, and I thought, wow, Jesus has been dead over 2,000 years, and he's got no Instagram account, no Twitter account, he doesn't do any podcasts, and yet every movement I go to, like a stand in the park, they're shrinking. And yet here, Jesus is filling this hall with people who are basically looking for something greater than just their physical constraints. Their soul is hungry for something. And I think in that hunger is the hope for humanity. Like you guys are talking to me now. I think we are part of a renaissance of humanity that is rising up going, no, we're not sure. Basically, I'll ask you a question. Do you feel that what you're doing, that you're on the right path? Yes or no?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Question number 2, where are you going?
That's a good question. Forward.
Yeah.
And that's faith.
Yeah.
That's faith. We know we're on the right path because somewhere inside us it says you're on the right path, and our heads are going, yeah, but where are we going? Yeah. And I think that's quite a profound, beautiful thing. And the other side is going to find it very hard to crush that because they don't understand what they're crushing. We've got to stop them getting to where they're going. We don't know where they're going. They just know they're going there. And so there's other things at play, Yeah. Even the other thing about my journey on the road is I feel, I've never been overtly religious, but I feel the presence of greater powers because we turn up at a town, sometimes we're tired and the bus is stinking hot, and we pull up outside this building where suddenly someone is going, oh my God, Michael from Café Locked Out, and they do an interview. And we just happen to park right outside their place in this whole town. And things like this happen every few days, which makes you feel, okay, little bits of evidence. It's, and we could be delusional, but it appears that way. So like most of us, I do wonder, what am I doing? Is I'm crazy? Am I going nuts? But then these things happen which go, just have faith, Mick. Just keep going. You old bastard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we've absolutely been there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get these little winks, these little synchronicities.
Yeah.
Where, nothing would happen if you didn't drive there or didn't move. If you're not going forward, even if you don't know where you're going, you're just going. It's like your destiny will meet you in these places. And I've certainly found that.
Yeah.
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 So I'm not alone. That's beautiful that you're saying that because this is, and that it's like the Hunger Games. You get a little parcel come down.
Yeah.
You go, okay. So, Sorry.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because when you were just talking about your journey earlier and how you said you were doing what you loved, but you still felt like you had this hole in your heart. And I think so many people that we talk to and even listen to when I listen to other podcasts, so many people have sort of said that same thing. And that's what's happened over this time is that it kind of has almost forced people onto their path of destiny or their, you know, their true destiny. And also, as I was listening to you speak, and again, I say this a lot on the podcast because a lot of our guests, again, sort of reverberate this same thing, that they just kind of fell into what they were doing, what they were really meant to be doing. And I often say to me, that's like a marker. If you just kind of fallen into it and everyone's like, you're so good at this, you should do this, or whatever, just circumstance has led you there. It's, to me, that's like, it is divinely guided. And I think that this is the time for this, because like you said, we definitely believe that this is a spiritual war, and that is the way forward. Like, if you don't know who you are on a spiritual level, I think you're definitely going to be left behind, because that is the old world. That's the old paradigm. And this new paradigm is shifting into that more spiritual, more of our spiritual selves being expressed.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. You know, there's, I can know without a shadow of doubt this is spiritual war. When I was in the things in Melbourne early on, everyone was saying it right from the beginning. People in the movement were carrying crucifixes around. You know, people were saying the Hail Mary over megaphones. You know, this is, and usually in the old Australia we would have scoffed at that, but no one was scoffing. And other religions were there too. You know, it's even, I mean, there was Muslims and Buddhists and you name it were in these marches, because I was going around interviewing anyone I could that was of interest, and they were all the same. This is a holy war, you know, a spiritual war. So here's where we are. But I think the thing that gets me is we seem to be splitting into a parallel universe. So you guys can have this conversation with me, and it's like everything makes sense. We're just constantly nodding to each other, yeah. But the other side of the parallel universe, they'll be like, what are you guys on about? It's like, you know, it's a complete disconnect, and there's no conversation. So I do talk to people the other side, but not like this much, unless you know, you meet someone a double jab and triple jab, they've had enough, they've been injured, or they've been on our side now, so they're on our side. But the others, it's just like, no, there's this huge gulf, and no form of communication seems to cross it. And then if they, like, where a lot of our people have been welcomed back into families, but it's only if you don't talk about these things. Like some woman sent me a letter the other day and said in her family, her grown children are severely vaccine injured, and she never took it. And all they say to her is, don't mention it. Don't bring it up. Don't stop giving us your alternative. Just don't mention it. And literally they're getting sicker and sicker. And the only one they're comfortable attacking is their own mother, who is trying to help them, and they don't want her help.
Yeah.
And there's a madness to that I can't get my consciousness around, you know?
Yeah.
The only thing it means is that they crave status, maybe. No, we're a part of the bigger herd. You know what I mean? And so if we talk to you, if we listen to you, if we take on your ideas, maybe the big herd will kick us out. And I'd rather die on my knees in the big herd than try survive on my feet and yours. I don't know.
Well, I think a big part of it is, especially like specifically to the COVID vaccines, because I think so many people went against their better judgment getting them because I've got to keep my job or whatever the reason was. I mean, I know people, I have extended family members who got it so they could go on a holiday, and they never went on the holiday when lockdown ended. But anyway, I think a big part of it is to admit that they were wrong, but to admit that to themselves. I think that's the hardest part for people, is that they have to admit that they went against themselves. And I think a lot of people can't face that, because once you say that once about one thing, I think it unravels a thread of all the times that they've just complied to things that they didn't really want to do. And I just think a lot of people, they just can't face it. That's my opinion.
Yeah. You know, Joe Rogan summed it up beautifully. He said, you know, once I used to trust vaccines, and then suddenly I questioned this one, and now I don't know whether we landed on the moon, because that's what happens. It's basically, I've been down the rabbit hole. That you fall down this rabbit hole. What's real? What's not? And it's quite a journey. And but within that journey, what I would say to people is that the greatest discovery you can find is a trust within yourself, because you find out how strong you are. You guys both would have gone through that. Suddenly, look, if shit gets really bad, I know there's one person I can rely on. That's me. I'll be able to stand up to this. Yeah. And so I think these are great discoveries, and that leads. I've actually got this really strange belief that we're sent here. I'll do it from you, Isaac. You're sent here as a man, right? Mm-hmm. Now, first off, one of the duties we have, I believe, is to make more people. And so, like, I'm one page of a novel that goes my father, my grandfather, my son, and it's this huge novel, and we don't even know most of the chapters because those people are long gone. But you're still a part of it, Isaac. Same with you, Alex. And so when my son was born, I remember I really saw it clearly. Okay, this is an ongoing novel. I'm this crazy little chapter, but now my son takes up the next novel, and hopefully he keeps it going. And so that's your first duty, is to keep the novel going. But your second mission, if you want it, is to find out exactly who Isaac is. And that's the Holy Grail. What's the best version of Isaac? Because we've got bad points and good points, but this is the best point. This is an Isaac that I could walk into my God with my head up and going, I found him. And then what you're going to do with that warrior. And I think this is what's happening. The same with Alexa. But I like saying, the only reason I'm saying it to Isaac is men have been downtrodden so much. Yeah. It's time to re-inspire men to go, you're a warrior. We're seeing it in New Zealand with the Maoris standing up against the trans people doing the haka. And I think this is one of the challenges God gives us, is to find out who you are. And I think a lot of us, once we got kicked out of society and suddenly we're just thrown out, what do we do? One of the things we discovered was ourselves. Okay, I had no one to back me up, but I withstood this $1 trillion propaganda campaign. And we're not taking your shit. And my kids are never taking your shit. And suddenly there is a brotherhood of men who can grow, and women as well. The women have been the bravest. But within the community, I know lots of men who are, well, they'll be there in the foxhole with you, Yeah. They'll fight. Yeah. You can rely on them. They're brothers. And so I think there's lots of great discoveries to make, because why come to this planet or this life and just skim through it like a skimming stone and then reach the grave? Why do that? You've got all this depth below you of who you could be, and then above you is the sky of the potential of what you could achieve. Why just take this nothing route, and the key to all of it, up or down, is risk and pain. That's it. Learn from pain, take a risk, push yourself, and discover yourself. And then,
Love that. That's literally what we're all about here at Natural AF. It's about discovering who we truly are, our natural state of being, because we've come so far from that. By way of governments and corporations and all this external influence that just pulls us further and further away from who we are and who we're meant to be. Yeah. So we can't agree with you more. And especially what you said about the men. I mean, you're preaching to the choir here. I'm sure Isaac.
Oh, I can see it in Isaac. Don't worry. I'm not putting you down, Isaac, but I can see it in
absolutely.
You. There's a thing with it. And I interviewed a young Texan the other day, and he was telling me how Texans didn't fall for any of this crap, a lot of them. And he's excited by the future. He doesn't care about AI, and he wants to have children. Where a lot of young Australians I meet, they don't want to have children. Why bring them into this world? And that's our leaders creating a world like that. Yeah. Instead of a world of hope and vision, they're just going, I can't afford a house. There's no jobs. They want to vaccinate me. I don't want to bring a kid into this. And so this is how far we are from where we should be. You know,
Yeah.
I remember telling my son he had a plethora of reasons why he shouldn't have kids. And I said, well, I've got one reason why you should have a kid. And he said, what's that? I said, I think you'd be a beautiful father.
Aww.
And he cried.
Mm.
And that's the thing. You know, this is what we're fighting for. We weren't sent here to be slaves to a corporation. We were sent here to be human beings. Maybe we chose, but you got to fight. You got to fight. If you're not prepared to fight for anything, why are you here?
Mm.
You know.
Yeah.
And
that's my passion too.
And I don't mean fight physically, but you know, change the world.
If it comes
for the
down
better.
to it, I'm all for people training and honing that side of it, and seeing men embody more of the completeness that they are. There's like I come from a military background, and there's a lot of, you know, one side, like very stern, very violent, you know, very like kind of one aspect of masculinity. And the men that I really respected, the ones that I knew were actually more lethal, were the ones that had that, you know, they could snap into the violence, and then they could also very calmly, very quietly just be very gentle. And like, to me, that's having more skills, more connection to who you are. It just makes you more vital, more of a force to be reckoned with. You're more creative. And a creative, violent man is more lethal than just a violent man. And it's not just about violence, but I agree. That is an aspect. It's the shadow side that people don't want to look at. Yeah. People are like, oh, no, the government would never do that. And then when the government's out there shooting you in the face, and you're still just like, oh, we're having a great time, hunky dory. You need to actually face that and see what you're capable of, because the government is a reflection of us. I keep saying that. A lot of people disagree. They say the government's doing this all to us. I see it as a reflection of the people. The people allowed them to get there. Yes. The people let them put up the traffic cameras. The people let them do this and that. They let them run without any hindrance, without any opposition. You know, and what you allow to exist will continue.
Yeah, I totally agree. The reason the government isn't, especially the Australian government, isn't acknowledging vaccine injured people is because the people don't care. The people are happy that they don't. You know what I mean? Otherwise, they would. The politicians just want to stay in power. So they look, most of the people don't care, so we're not going to care either. Otherwise, they would do something. So, yeah, I totally agree with you. I even see, like, I was watching, when I was interviewing these injured farmers, I saw the beauty of man in just this small gesture. She was trying to open a jar at the table where we were having dinner, and she just said, and she just handed it across to him. Now, she was the brains of the unit. I mean, he's a clever guy, but he just took it, clicked and gave it back to her. And I thought, that's masculinity. It's only a little bit stronger, but they're very handy people to have around. You know what I mean? And it's just, but he has his strength. He could have stood up and smacked it down. He's stronger than her. You open it, or you know, and he could have dominated her with his strength, but only with his strength, not with his spirit and not with her spirit. So we have this excess strength, but I see men that they have it there. Like I think one of your presidents said, walk quietly, but carry a big stick. And I think we have the propensity to do violence, but we don't do it. Instead, what I love about Australian men, and this is men everywhere, I saw it when a small truck broke down in Melbourne, and I got out to help push it. But by the time I got there, there's like 4 or 5 other guys there. We all pushed the truck out of the way, and then we didn't go, oh, can I have an Instagram post of how I've been a hero pushing the truck? We just pushed it out of the way, and then didn't even shake their hands. Guy said, yeah, see you, mate, and then got back and we took off. Yeah. That's what we do. That's what we do. We helped, we got off. I know there's been car accidents and stuff, and women do get to it, but it's often, if you see a car accident, it's often the guys there first. It's burning. You know, this is something we do. We're protectors of society. And I think it's not always needed, but it's there. You know what I mean? I know I saw something on a plane of this person going crazy, And then this guy stood up. It was an American. And he just stood up, and he never got angry. He was just calm, and he just looked. But you got a sense of, okay, and then another guy stood up and go, okay, there's some control happening here. So I think there's a beauty to it. You know what I mean? Even though I truly believe the women are actually stronger. But there's, but there is, I don't know. We're actually quite beautiful human beings, even though we have this dark side to us. We really have the ability to be quite extraordinarily beautiful and noble and stoic. And I hear these stories of people making great sacrifices. Like even today, I've got a Dr. Nixon, who's going to be deregistered, and because he gave away 800 exemptions to the vaccine, and he sent me the basically the documents they're going to use to prosecute him. And all he has is these letters of people begging for the exemption, and their hearts are bleeding onto the page.
Mm-hmm.
And this man basically went, I've got a choice here. I can ignore them and just do what the government says and keep my job, or I can live up to my Hippocratic oath of do no harm. And these people don't want the vaccine. They feel it's going to harm them. I don't want to be a part of that harm. So I offered the exemption. And so he loses being a doctor. He suffers, loses money, loses everything for what he believes is the right thing to do, like a Schindler's choice. And this is what I see. I've seen it with other doctors and nurses. I've seen it with very ordinary people, that they're doing great historic deeds that just go unnoticed. And it's a personal choice of where basically life, it's like the devil on Mount Sinai. Look, you can have your job, you can have your holiday to Bali, you can keep up with all your family and friends. You just got to make this choice. And then and all you got to do is have me your soul. And some people said, no, my soul's more important. And they lost everything that they thought was important. But here they are, Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Momentous times.
Yeah.
Momentous times.
Yeah. And I love what you said about the men and the women. It's really interesting because a lot of people said that over the last few years, especially during COVID, was that it was a lot of the women that were standing up and saying no. And I think especially when it comes to the vaccine issue, it does tend to be women that are saying no, because before COVID, it was about the childhood vaccines, and it was the mothers of vaccine injured children that were saying there's something not right here, and they were the ones that were really speaking out. So, but I think what you said is so important, because again, another agenda, and we're seeing it with the trans movement and the LGBTQ rubbish, is this attack on masculinity, because they don't want a strong masculine presence in society, because that means that they're not going to get away with everything that they've gotten away with up until this point. But I think we are seeing a resurgence of men stepping back into their masculinity and, protecting the women so that the women don't have to. And they always will, especially when it comes to, I believe, our children. I believe women are always going to be very fiercely protective of the children. But I think with men stepping into that more, I just think, it brings much more balance back into society as a whole.
Well, Isaac said he's done military, and military, if you're going to attack somewhere that's entrenched, the first thing you want to do is bring down the defenses. And if you can bring down the defenses before your people attack, you got a better chance. And so I think the attack on men over the last few decades has been to remove the defenses. And then when they come in, the men have lost their ability to stand up, because they're not sure where they stand or what their purpose is or stuff like this. So I think that's been on purpose. But I think women are under attack now. And we saw it in the Olympics with those boxers. I think there's this Marxist regime to destroy family units. That make all of us, people like to know where they stand. And at the moment, things are changing so much. Everyone's like standing on a jellyfish. You don't know where you stand. And that is why faith is so important. Because faith is like a rock you can stand on no matter what they're throwing against you. I've got a faith. I'm meant to be here. I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing. And every now and again, I get a little synchronicity which goes, yep, it's okay. Keep going. You know what I mean? And you have to, and it's a leap. Because on the morning of the shrine, there was police everywhere. I was near Queen Victoria Markets. The day before, we'd been on the Westgate Bridge, and there was so much hope, but those men didn't come back. And the morning of the shrine, there was police everywhere, and they were being brutal. And I wanted to go home. I was actually scared because I thought, I'm going to get my head kicked in here. But I thought, but if I go home, my son or my grandson is going to be fighting these people, but they're going to be fighting against real bullets. So I can't go home. But I was too scared to stay because I'd seen the brutality over the last period of weeks. So I was sitting there. And so for the first time in my life, I really prayed. And I actually said, listen, you don't owe me anything. I spent most of my life pretending you don't exist, never got there, now I'm being agnostic. But right now, if you'll take my pain away, if you take my fear away, because I have to stay, but I'm too scared to stay. But if you take my fear away, I'll fight for you. And my fear went. My fear just went. And then that day I got shot by rubber bullets. I got my head kicked in by the police at the shrine. I got arrested. And all these other numerous things have happened to me since. But I've never been scared. And what I mean scared to the point that I can't actually go forward. Do you know what I mean? Where the fear actually goes, this is as far as you can go, Mick. You're too frightened. No, that hasn't happened. So everything is done. Even if I'm get fearful, I don't give into it. That's why I have the sign, courage is the cure. Fear is the virus, courage is the cure. And so that's the journey that I've learnt about myself. And so I've been beaten up in Catherine in the Northern Territory when we were there. Our vehicle then got urinated on, covered in crap, and they put barbed wire under the wheels. And we've had hairy moments, but I've never been scared. The moment where I realized I was completely free was I'd heard a lot of sad stories, and I just needed to get away from everyone. And so I drove into the bush down this little track, and I found this little clearing by myself. And I did a show from there, but I was just by myself, just to sort of, I don't know, just to recuperate. And in the morning, I looked through the back window of this bus, which was in a bad state then because she didn't like starting and didn't like going and all that. Anyway, the Harley Davidson is winding its way through the bush towards me. And I thought, wow. And I was looking at it thinking, I wonder if they're going to kill me. I'm way away from anyone. No one will probably find me for a couple of weeks or a month. Perfect time to knock me off. And so I'm looking at it and I thought, well, I don't have any weapons. I know the bus, it was a bitch. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say the word. It was very hard to start. and I couldn't outrun it anyway because she only does 80 Ks, you know. So I went out to meet my maker with my muesli. And I thought, well, that's it, Mick. You know, I'm okay with this. There's nothing I can do. And I'm not going to cow. I'm not going to beg. So I just went out with my muesli to meet my maker. And I was amazed how I was okay with that. And he came right up to me. And I was looking at my face in his visor. And then he opened it up and he was a massive fan. He found my map. I had a map on the laptop which was attached to my phone to show people exactly where I was. I'd forgotten about it. And he went, oh, Café Locked Out, Michael, it's so nice to meet you. And I was going, but I was not frightened. I thought, if I'm going to die now, okay, this is what it's meant to be. And after that happened, I remember when we drove off, I remember thinking, I'm free. They can't break me now because I'm not scared of dying. And so from there to now, I just do what I do, and whatever happens, what happens. And I just keep following the voice in my heart. That's it. That's all I do. I could be crazy. I could be completely delusional, but that's all I do, you know? And so far I've luckily I've managed to weather everything that's been thrown at me. And in my small way, and it's only a small way because there's all people doing stuff now, in my small way, I try to be, because what I know is like off the coast of Victoria are the 12 apostles. And these 12 apostles, there's only 3 left now. And they went, and they're like monoliths, rock monoliths off the coast, Isaac, if you don't know what they are. But they've been brought down not by a tsunami or earthquake, but by lots of little waves, bashing, 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 until these things that look like they would never topple collapse to the force of these little waves. And that's what I am. I'm one of these little waves.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Well,
That's
I
what you
commend
guys
you
are.
for.
And we just keep chipping away.
Yeah.
We're annoying.
I commend you
to
for
them.
staying steady and being that constant wave and chipping away. That's exactly, small wins lead to big victories.
And I love
That's
that
right,
story you told, Michael, because I think when we had Rachel Vaughan on, that's what she actually said, was that once you are no longer, you have no fear of dying, that's when you are not only truly free, but there's nothing that anyone can ever do against you. Because even if they kill you, you don't fear it. So I think it's such an important message, because we do need to step out of fear. I think that's what we've seen, like you said, in this divide in society, is that the people that are still in fear and complying with everything and just going along to get along, we can see what's happening on that side. And for the ones that have had the courage to say no and follow their heart, we are living completely different lives. And you can feel that in these communities that people aren't operating on fear. And it's so much more conducive to a fulfilled life that is purposeful.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree. I think even if you have a fear of dying, then you're in the wrong place. You haven't started living yet. You're not doing what you're meant to be doing. So you're not frightened of so much dying, but you're frightened of dying knowing that I never lived. I didn't do, maybe spiritually I wasn't doing what I'm meant to be doing. And there's more to me than this. I actually thoroughly believe that, well, I'll tell you, the most extraordinary interview I did, sorry if I'm going over, was with an artist living in Portuguese called Sam. If you can get him, I know he's again by Instagram, he's a beautiful person to interview. He was born in a desert in WA in Waroona on a property. And he went to a small bush school up there. It's very, very remote. This is 70 years ago. And the principal of this tiny school told all the teachers, every child here has a gift. It's your job to find out what that gift is and help the child realize that gift. And the teacher said to his father when this kid was about 14, you can't send this boy to university. He's an artist. And everyone listened to this principal. And now this man is in Portugal, and he's a great artist. And his art's extraordinary, and that's the life he led. And so I believe that when you have children, you two, your children will be born with the seeds of greatness. It's in them somewhere. And we need a society where not only do we try to help them identify their seeds of greatness, but we have a system that allows them to grow, water them this, whatever they need to realize the potential that they are born with. Where I think at the moment we have a society that just wants them to be consumers. So all they're interested in is making sure those seeds never grow. That this, like say, I remember when I went to buy my daughter a Christmas present when she was, say, 4, and I bought my son stuff, and I was looking at all the stuff available for girls. I saw dolls that she would never look like. I saw cleaning equipment, that plastic. I realized that somehow I realized that I had this beautiful, vibrant, powerful little young girl who hadn't yet to go to school. And society was getting ready to break her, like breaking a stallion, and crush her. And so that she would hate herself and that she would not try to succeed. And that all her life she would just buy stuff that she doesn't need, trying to alleviate this sense of loss and this thing inside her, making her a product, a consumer, a consumer. And that's kind of what happened. She's still struggling with that. And so to me, an idea of society would be the other way, where every child born is just a great gift from the gods or the universe. And as a society, we're excited to see what they've brought, what they could become. And we as parents, grandparents or uncles and aunties, or even just, communal, our lives will benefit knowing that, like, as the sun is the core of our galaxy, in our universe, the children are the core of our galaxy. And I think that would lead ultimately to a better place, less homelessness, less this, because ultimately, instead of just caring for money's great and this, but the good, healthy majority of us, the only thing we truly, truly care for is each other.
Yeah. Such a beautiful place to end it, Michael. Such beautiful words. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
No worries. No worries.
Yeah, it's been great talking to you and hearing about your adventures. And I hope to hear of more triumphs than setbacks in the future. And our prayers are with you and our spirits with you.
Yeah. Just look out your window. If you see a little ripple going by, it might be me.
And before we end, Michael, where can people find you? So obviously we've mentioned Café Locked Out, but where can people watch and stream from?
It's Café Locked Out Rumble, Café Locked Out Twitter. Our main page got taken. We got a 10-year ban on Facebook for our Café Locked Out page on Facebook. They gave us a 10-year ban.
That's how you know you're on the right path. If Facebook's banning you for 10 years.
And Twitter, we did a FOI to E. Karen to say we think we're being censored on Twitter. And they got back, first off, they said no. Then they sent another letter to say, yes, you are. You're being censored by a third party. And now they're taking another 30 days to decide whether they're obligated to tell us who the third party is. So unfortunately, we are being censored. But my Substack is very popular, so a lot of thoughts go there. Everything's just Café Locked Out. And there's a lot of false ones. There's so many false ones with me, but they're out there, yeah.
Wow.
And,
awesome. Well, we'll pop all those links in the show notes for people. And, it was so great chatting to you. And hopefully we'll chat to you again soon.
And God bless to both of you, honestly. Really are. Really.
Thank you.
I wish you the best. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
Well, thank you so much for watching and listening. I hope this episode was thought-provoking and interesting to you. Let us know what you thought about it in the comments, or if you have your own stories about this, we'd love to hear and just discuss in the comments.
And I also wanted to share because after we finished recording, we were off air, and Michael actually shared a beautiful quote which that he wrote, and it's actually written on his bus, which was in the background. He shared with us the whole quote, but the first part, which is the part that I wrote down and I really wanted to share because it's really beautiful, but I think it will also, it's quite thought-provoking, and I'd love to hear some discussion around it, is that greatness is not a destiny, it's a choice. Yes. And this is interesting, I think, because this has come up for both of us in different ways. But I know for me, and I don't know if we've spoken about this on the podcast before, but I know for me, like when I was younger, I did have this very deep sense that I was destined for greatness, so to speak, but I didn't know what that looked like at a really young age. And because of my worldview growing up, when I started high school and I'd always been kind of musical, and then I moved into singing and I was doing vocal coaching. And I did that all through high school and into my early 20s. And so I always thought that like my greatness was like I was going to be a famous singer. And then getting into my early 20s, I was kind of like, that was just a pipe dream that it just started to not fit for me anymore. But now so much has changed for me, especially in the last, 5 or 6 years. That feeling of being destined for greatness, it feels like I'm stepping into that, but in a much more subtle way. And I think a lot of people are stepping into that now just by taking responsibility for themselves and like really following their their purpose and their heart. Like, you know, what Michael talked about like following from here, you know, being more heart and soul led. And that is where the greatness lies. You know what I mean?
Yep. I mean, kind of. I've always been great, so I don't know. I don't know what the big deal is. No, I think you're right. When I was 13 or 14, I thought I was going to be a great bass guitar player in a epic rock / punk band. And for a time I was, and then I wasn't, and then I was something else.
Yeah.
But now it's, I don't know, in a way, this is another form of performance, but it's something more meaningful where it's like, I want to present good thoughts and ideas and guests and our unique perspectives and the way that we see that we can pitch in and help raise a voice about things that matter to us and other people. So,
yeah. And I think because greatness, I think, is one of those things that it sounds so grand and expansive that I think like most people, well, I can't speak for most people, but I feel like a lot of people, like what comes to mind when you talk about greatness is that like this, you're on a world stage and you're famous and all these people know you and that kind of thing. But I see greatness as people that are like homesteading and they look after themselves and they're raising kids and they're homeschooling them and they have really awesome families and amazing kids. And to me, that's greatness.
Yeah. I can see it. And my sister will love this if she listens, but I see her as great. She's commented a few times on some of my experiences and my adventures. And she's, I'm just over here doing my little thing. And you're doing all this crazy good, you know, I'm like, no. She's raised 8 children. Yeah. I love them all. And she's been the most cheerful person. You think I get this like all the time. I hear in movies and TV, and then people, it trickles out into society when they hear of somebody having 8 kids, they're just like, that's insane. And there's all this imagery of just being miserable and screaming at kids with like chickens flying everywhere and like your hair's all messed up. I've never seen my sister like that, even though she may have had moments like that. But she has so many funny stories. She's a light in their family, and she really is. She's what makes it a home. And same thing with my mom. I have, 4 siblings, and like my mom is kind of the glue that holds everything together and creates the home there. And that's what greatness is for me as well.
Yeah, I love it. And I love this conversation with Michael because he's very different to a lot of the other guests we've had on. But I actually liked that. I love having different opinions on and different perspectives on things, like hearing Michael's experiences during that time, that craziness of COVID. It's really eye-opening, especially because when you hear these things, like those things were going around social media and videos and stuff, but like to hear it from someone that was there firsthand, it's really fascinating. And I loved hearing Michael's perspective on things.
Yeah. And on the topic of greatness, just one last thing before we go. Australia is, in a lot of ways, a very great nation, in, not in a great superpower, world power, all this stuff, but I mean, spectacular land and all this other stuff, history, energy, all the ancient old world energy and ancestors that are here. And I feel like it's like a cyclical thing. Maybe Australia in a way is coming up again. The people, the men here especially, feel like they're like kind of at the end of a cycle, and now they're going to start coming back. But it could get bumpy. It could be a difficult, tumultuous time like they've seen down here before I moved over here. And I always tell people I like my civilizations pre-collapse, or pre-revolution. So I'm down here for the great show, and we'll see. But I'm thinking this will be a beneficial energy revolution that doesn't turn into a hot revolution. It doesn't need to be. It's just men need to wake up and stand up and just stop saying, "Yeah, she'll be right." Make it what you want it to be. Let this, this last 4 years just show you, like really sit down and reflect on it. Like what happened? Why did it happen? And what energy do you want to put into the future? Do you want to just forget about it and just pretend like it never happened, or create something great, choose something great? Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Couldn't have said it better myself. I think Australia is going through this very painful transition. as is a lot of the world, but especially here. And yeah, I think that there is this reclamation happening though. That is pretty powerful because the land that we're on, especially like in the Northern Rivers area where we are, and especially like Uluru, like these really sacred places, like they actually extend out. There are ley lines that run through these really, really sacred places to the rest of the world. And so I think that the work that's being done here, especially like in our area, I can only speak for this area, but the work that's being done here now by so many people, I think that's definitely making waves or making ripples, as Michael said. And, you know, like he said at the end, which I loved, it's like just our little waves just keep chipping away. Just those little waves keep chipping away and chipping away. And big things end up happening. So I'm excited for it. I love it. I can totally see why I chose now to come to Earth at this time, to be here on this land in particular. Like I always thought it was wild, like my mum being from Egypt and my dad being from Serbia and then them coming here. I always thought about that. Like how crazy that like that was my parents, you know, they came from different countries and they met here and then I was born here. Like why? I used to always question that. And now I know 100% I was so meant to be here. Love it.
Yeah.
I live for this shit.
Yeah. And apparently I am too. I feel like I have ancient ancestors here. I feel, you know, I feel like I was an Aboriginal at one point.
Yeah, same. So do I.
I get that black energy in me.
Anyway, we'll quit rambling. If you enjoyed this episode, guys, please like, share, and subscribe wherever you're listening. Drop us a comment. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on, actually, we're on all the socials, I think. So follow us wherever you're on. And yeah, let us know what you thought of this episode. If you watch the intro, let us know if you've been food shamed or you're a food snob. I want to hear all the stories. And what else did we ask for in the open? Oh, what do you think our little segment should be called in the opener? Just Isaac and I.
Yeah, drop us a line. And what's next week?
Next week, we have Dottie on. So speaking of the amazing work that's happening in this area, our beautiful friend Dottie, who's a big part of the Living Free movement as well, just kind of working more in the background and yeah, in various different groups and whatever. She's very tapped into the spirit, has had so many wild experiences. So can't wait to have her on to share some of that. And yeah, I guess we're really going to dive deep into religion versus spirituality, which is going to be a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, going to kill some sacred cows on that one.
Yeah,
going to step
for
on a
sure.
few toes, but in a loving way.
Yeah,
so
for
enjoy
sure.
that. We'll catch you on the next one.
See you next time, guys.